Oh, there's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Well, hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac, and I'm here with another book haul. Let's get started. These are just completely random. I pulled them off the stack, and I don't even know which one. I can't even see behind me. I'm just going to pull them out, and I'm going to show them. This is called The Handsome Monk and Other Stories. Anybody wondering why I bought it? Was it a title buy? It's not necessarily a cover buy, but I like to read about handsome monks, don't you? And it's by Tsering Döndrup, translated from I'm going to guess the Tibetan, by Christopher Peacock. And this is part of the Weatherhood Books on Asia series from Columbia University Press. He is one of the most... Döndrup, if I'm pronouncing his name properly. It's late, I'm tired, I buy a lot of translated literature and I do my best, but for tonight I'm not going to look up anything because I'm tired. So when I review the book, I will do all the due diligence on the pronunciation. Can we make that a temporary deal tonight, people? Döndrup is one of the most popular and critically acclaimed authors in Tibet. So I imagine these were censored stories, but there is an introduction called Corrupt Lamas, Reliable Yaks, The Fictional World of Tsering Döndrup. This sounds fascinating. These are short stories. He was born in 1961. He has won literary prizes in Tibet, Mongolia, and national prizes in China. So I'm assuming he must be heavily kind of controlled and censored. So let's listen to the first paragraph in the first story. The first story is called The Disturbance in D Camp. 1. Something like this really did happen. As soon as it took place, I wrote a report and sent it to the county government, who, after marking it with the words "Situation Verified" and affixing an official seal, sent it on to some Tibetan newspaper. About a year passed, and there was still no response. Later, I found out from a friend of mine that the editor of the paper had buried my report in a corner of the office, muttering, "We've been hearing a lot about this sort of thing lately. Gotta be careful. Have to be careful." For this reason, I decided to change the names of the people and places involved and write it up as a story. So that already intrigues me because there's a protest kind of defiance to that, a subterfuge. What's the word I'm looking for? There's an oppositional stance to that opening that makes me think that he managed to maybe he snuck these stories out of the country. I need to know a lot more about his story, but certainly now that I've read the opening paragraph of the first story, I very much want to read it. This is fun. I have no idea what's coming next off the pile. Oh, well, we're going from... This couldn't be more different, perhaps, than the other one, although this is definitely oppositional. This is a novella by the author of one of the best books written in 2020, Detransition Babies, Torrey Peters, and this is her earlier novella, Infect Your Friends and Loved Ones. I'm not in love with that cover image, but it's a very provocative title. It says on the back, limited edition of 350. I'm not sure that it's limited anymore because this edition was printed in Japan. But anyway... The first 3 sentences from the back blurb. In the future, everyone will be trans. So says Lexi. She's a charismatic trans woman, furious with the way she sees her trans friends treated by society, and resentful of the girl who spurned her love. Well, that sounds like this could have been kind of a precursor to a lot of the themes she explores so beautifully and powerfully in Detransition Baby. Here's the opening paragraph. The heading is Tipton, Iowa, 7 years after contagion. I'm lugging a bucket of grain to feed the sows with 2 hands to keep the weight of it, hung from that thin wire, from biting into my somehow never callousing fingers, when Keith comes up behind me and hoists it away from me with 1 hand. He holds it up, still with 1 hand, and tisks at me. Looks like you need some help there, little lady. Here is another novel from the Dutch author that I've read one novella by him and absolutely loved it. And so this is The Darkroom of Damocles by Willem Frederik Hermans. Translated from the Dutch by Ina Rilke. It's also set under the Nazi occupation. The protagonist finds himself drawn into the resistance by his near doppelganger. And plot ensues. It's a razor-sharp classic thriller set in a world where everything is permitted, even murder. John le Carre gave it a blurb. I read his An Untouched House and was obliterated by it. One of the best war novels I've ever read. This was published in 1958, translation 2007. We shall see. One of these things is not like the other. No, it's not a royal biography. It's a biography of Rachel Maddow, which I could get really cheap online a couple years after it came out, by Lisa Rogak. And I love Rachel Maddow. I have been listening to her on podcast since the primary season for the 2008 election, the one where Obama became president. I started listening to her, and she was so. I think in her first year of having her MSNBC show, I started listening to her, and I don't think I've missed an episode. I listen to it every day. I listen to it in Vancouver. I listen to it in Tokyo. I love Rachel Maddow. I agree with most of her politics, not necessarily all, but who cares? But I just find her a fascinating figure, and I want to know more about her. And she plays for my team. I don't think I heard that this was a wonderful biography, but if it gives me a little bit more about Rachel, I will enjoy it. This came out in 2019. So this one it almost has a self-published feel, but I don't think it's self-published, but it's certainly not a book where I've heard many people talking about it. It is a Chinese novel. Is it translated? No. Written in English by the author, and here it is. It's got a gorgeous cover. Flowing Water, Falling Flowers by X.H. Collins. And X.H. Collins, here she is, was born in Hechuan, China, grew up in Kanding on the East Tibet Plateau. She has a PhD in nutrition and is a biology prof in Illinois. She lives in Iowa with her husband and son. This is her first novel. So, it's about an art history prof who loses her job and her lover in one fell swoop. I'm quoting, in one fell swoop. That's one of my favorite phrases. But usually it's bad things that happen in one fell swoop. But I digress. Let's carry on. So because of that, she agrees to go with her mum to visit relatives in the Chinese hometown of Three Rivers. Plot ensues. Oh, it looks like there's another parallel plot line farther back in Chinese history in the Qing Dynasty, which makes me even more interested. There are family trees. All I can do is give it a try, hey? I only read opening sentences or paragraphs if they have some kind of a standalone quality. That one didn't, but it doesn't prejudice me against the book if the opening sentence or two doesn't. Here is a Nigerian novel that has transgender themes. An Ordinary Wonder by Buki Papillon. Well, I'm pronouncing it the French way, but I don't know how it would be pronounced in Nigeria. Buki Papillon, maybe? Don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly in the French way, but it's the story of a young man who leaves boarding school, falls in love with his roommate, hides his love and his true self. I believe that this person transitions into some kind of a transgender identity later in the story. Buki Papillon lives in Boston. She was born in Nigeria. This is her debut. Published this year. And I love the epigraph. A person who sells eggs should not start a fight in the market. Words to live by. Opening paragraph, 1991. The protagonist, Otto, or Otto Loren, is age 14 at this time. My name is Otto Loren. I've been called monster. Within dark valleys of flesh, I defy the given. A snake curled in upon itself, two in one, mythical and shunned. Yet in that magical place between worlds, in the realm where the Great Mother gives milk to her offspring, I become like a goddess. There, in words unspoken, my voice is heard. I often wish I could take Wura, my sister, with me to visit that place where I truly come alive, but I cannot, because Wura is normal, so it would be death. Well, that is pretty inviting opening paragraph. I'd kind of forgotten about this book. I'm newly... There's a bit of an optical illusion, enigmatic optical illusion thingy happening. You gotta look at the cover image and kind of turn your head until it all clicks, so... It didn't ever click for me until just this minute. Did you notice that you're going to have to rewind now? Fabulous white dress. Next we have The Manningtree Witches by A.K. Blakemore. I think I saw this on a Lit Hub or something, so I've talked about it a little bit. It is a novel, a historical novel set in England 1643. So that's when Parliament was battling the king. A war between the Roundheads and the Cavaliers. So I think that's during what triggered the interregnum. Anyway, and it has to do with witchcraft. And I've heard good things about it. I haven't heard a lot about it, but what I've heard has been quite good. And I love this author photo. It's one of the most fascinating author photos I've ever seen. Look at that. That is A.K. Blakemore. Isn't she fabulous? Wait a minute. Is it a she? Yes. She has written 2 collections of poetry, and she has also translated the work of a Sichuanese poet, Yu Yo-Yo. How fabulous is that? Opening paragraph. A hill wet with broom of morning, one hawberry bush squalid with browning flowers. I have woken and put on my work dress, which is near enough my only dress, and yet she remains asleep. Jade, pot companion, mother. I stand at the end of the cot and consider her face. A beam of morning sun from the window slices over the left cheek. Dark hair spread about the pillow, matted and greasy and graying in places. That is just gorgeous writing. Wow, I had no idea the writing was that searing. Next we have The White Ship by Charles Spencer. This is Lady Di's brother. I had no idea he was a popular historian. He's written a whole pile of books. I found out about it on Steve Donahue, and this is his latest one, but he's written a whole pile of popular history. I had no idea. The subtitle is Conquest, Anarchy, and the Wrecking of Henry I's Dream. And it is about the sinking of the White Ship in 1120. Which was a huge disaster in early British history. I'd never heard of it, or if I studied it in high school or something, I have no memory of it, where the ship that sank had on board the king's heir and the flower of Anglo-Norman society. I think that's 2 people, not 1. They were drowned, so yeah, the verb were makes me think, yes, obviously it's 2 people. And the future of the crown was thrown violently off course. So, doesn't give you many details, but I did do a little bit of a deep dive, and so Henry I is William the Conqueror's son, and Henry I's son died on board this ship, and somebody else was really important in the politics or whatever of the day. And I am dying to read this. Oh, it's got some gloss. Ooh, look at all the color pictures. This is the softcover edition, which I could get really fast here in Tokyo online. I can't wait. And this is a classic of prairie, Western Canadian, in fact, probably even more specifically, Saskatchewan nature writing. River in a Dry Land, A Prairie Passage by Trevor Harriott. I read another book of his, very short little book, earlier this year, and I loved it. Mum raved about this book on a chat that I had with her and Heidi and Doris and Heidi of the Book Naturalist Club. We did a Zoom chat. I'll put a link to that. And she talked a lot about this book then, which put it back on my radar, especially since I then, just a few short weeks later, went on to read a much more recent book by Trevor Harriott, and I got a used copy online that's in this beautiful condition for a song, because this is published in the year 2000 and is out of print. Trevor Harriott is a prairie naturalist, lives in Regina, which, I'm surprised he even admits that. I come from the more Saskatoon area of the province, and, the rivalry between the 2 main cities, Tokyo, Osaka, New York, Boston, whatever. You name a country, there's always something, or name a province. So in Saskatchewan, Saskatoon and Regina. So he's from Regina, and he even admits it. Anyway, this is about the lives and myths of his home landscape, the rolling grasslands and forests of Saskatchewan's Qu'Appelle River country. So it's a portrayal of the settlement of the northern Great Plains. So these are my people, this is my area, and when I lived there, or any of the years that I lived in Canada, I was completely obtuse and uninterested in naturalism or history, and I've certainly changed my tune now that I've lived far away, and this is one of the books that I absolutely must read. Here is a hand-drawn map of the Capel Basin. Some of my great-grandparents homesteaded in this area, or certainly nearby. So I can't wait to get to it. Next are a few books that I got through some kind of a Facebook group for people selling their books here in Tokyo, and I got, I think, more than these three, but here's the three that I have. So the first one, I got them for like $1 each or something, plus I paid for the shipping, so they came to my house. I sent a transfer through my bank account. It was just the slickest thing. Here is a collection of stories and poems by a Greek immigrant to Australia. Wow, I wonder if I have to talk to James of the Caustic Cover Critic about this one. It's called The Same Light by Vasso Kalamaras. Imagine me finding this 1989 book published in Australia by a Greek immigrant to Australia here in Tokyo, but I did. The author is a woman. If you didn't know, I didn't know. Didn't know that name, Vasso Kalamaras. Born in Athens, came to Western Australia in 1951. She writes in her native Greek and translates her work into English with the assistance of a number of translators. Very interesting. Okay, well, I actually quite like the opening poem in the collection. It's called Now, and it was translated by Conquest. Now that the time approaches when I shall belong to the past, I sit and tie up in bundles all the beloved faces which once I had and lost. I place them in a large hallowed ring. I find their faults now insignificant, and their gifts the sweet wet kiss of a dawn. Together we do much more in thought. In the light which from eternity reveals the truth within us to the depth of depths, we remain beyond all else people. That's where I stopped. That's quite lovely. And from the same seller, I got a paper copy of The Green Road by Anne Enright, which I read as an ebook for the Irish Readathon. I absolutely loved it. So now I have my own copy. And she also sold me a Borges collection of short stories, The Aleph and Other Stories. I don't know if I'm interested in Borges. I think he might be too something for me, too smart. But I've never really given him much of a try. What do you think? Is Borges for me? Here is a book I bought online just because I love the title. I am militantly anti-colonialist in terms of my identity as a white settler Canadian, and this title just jumped out at me, and it was a bargain price online. Colonial Genocide in Indigenous North America. But it's a very academic kind of collection of essays. I don't know if I'll ever read it. It was edited by Andrew Woolford, Jeff Benvenuto, and Alexander Laban Hinton. I like the cover art. It's an important collection of essays that expands the geographic, demographic, and analytic scope of the term genocide to encompass the effects of colonialism and settler colonialism in North America. Well, I don't like the wordiness of that, but I am totally behind the anti-colonialist stance there. Like I say, it might be a reference work rather than a book that I read in its entirety. There are chapters here on Indigenous boarding schools in the US and Canada. It's a huge topic in Canada right now. It just breaks my heart. There's quite a bit about the residential schools. One of the main ways that we perpetrated the genocide. So, yeah, there's lots of stuff in here. And finally, this was a book that I recommended to Nell of Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and I knew it was forthcoming because Torrey Peters, the author of the wonderful Detransition Baby, recommended it on one of the Zoom kind of appearances she made. And Nell went ahead and read it before I even got my copy and loved it, and I think she's made a full video about it, video review, but I haven't even read my copy, and I'm the one that suggested it. She's so ahead of the game. So good for you, Nell. Here it is. Darryl by Jackie Ess. And this is a transgender writer, and it is about a man named Darryl. Lives in a quiet home in Western Oregon, and he has a kind of cuckolding fetish, so he likes watching his wife have sex with other men. But then there's some kind of a transgender thing that comes into the story, and apparently it is just so much more fascinating, mind-boggling, and gripping than that synopsis makes it sound. I have to get to it. That is my book haul. Thanks for watching.